Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alexis Gee, a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. Gee.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alexis Gee. Listen, I'm really excited about season 11. I'm excited about the topics that we are discussing. I'm really excited about my guest today. I shouldn't be biased. I shouldn't say this. With over 200 episodes, I've had a plethora of guests, but this is one of my favorite guests, one of my favorite people on the planet. This is my daughter, Catherine Alexis Gee, Lex, as she's called among her friends and family, who's in the studio today. Lex, how are you feeling today, honey?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
I am glad that you're here. Let me tell you a little bit about Lex. She has a BA in English and a minor in Italian from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and a master's degree, I think you guys call it MALIS, a Master's of Art in Library and Information Services from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she was awarded a full fellowship. I mean, they paid you to go to school, and a father loves to hear that. She's also taken on a new role as a librarian. She is the founding curator of stories for the Center for Black Excellence in Culture. You had a chance to walk through the space last week to see where you're going to touch minds and train minds and help children escape the ugliness of the world through reading and teach their parents about how to join with them in that. What did it feel like standing in that space, knowing that's where you're going to be working and spending time curating stories for young, brilliant Black minds?
It's really powerful. I think that there's a certain energy in the space that you can feel, even if it's not
It's just concrete right now, but you can feel it.
Yeah, but you can feel it. And I think I'm so excited. It's such important, necessary work. And I'm really excited and really honored to be a part of it.
Oh, well, I'm so proud. And you have the training in the background for this, and it's going to be part reading room, part library. Mm-hmm. I told you to think about it like a bookstore. Mm-hmm. And what would space like that have meant to you growing up? And clearly you're a voracious reader. We knew that as a child. When you were a child, if we wanted to punish you, it was like, all right, you don't eat those vegetables, we're not going to let you read a book. What would it have meant to have space where the artwork, the seating, the colors, the books, the titles, the artists, the authors were Black and talked about and spoken to your life? Mm. What would that have meant for you growing up in a place like Madison, Wisconsin?
I think growing up in Madison, I felt like, particularly with how much I loved to read and how much I would use books as escapism, I felt like I had to sort of find that for myself. Mm-hmm. And I think having a space like this that's built with the intention of creating a space where kids can come and learn more about what they love, and sort of meet them where they are. I think that makes a world of difference. I think a lot of people who don't like to read sort of think of it as more of a task. Mm-hmm. And I think one really important thing that librarians do is sort of open the door for people and for patrons who either want to find books and materials that really sort of register with them, mm-hmm. Or even just as a community space. I think it's really important, and I'm super passionate about it. So I'm really excited.
Well, I'm proud of how you've prepared yourself for this. I mean, one of your first jobs, other than maybe babysitting, was to read to children at the South Madison Library. Mm-hmm. I mean, your mom and I paid you to read to little kids, and then I think her name was Christine hired you the next year, even though you were too young to have a worker's permit. Mm-hmm. She still hired you to come in and read
Yep.
to kids. So it's interesting that even what you enjoy doing for children at 9, 10, 11 years old is what you get a chance to do now.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about for you and having worked as a librarian in the public library system is that sometimes you were invited to apply for jobs as a youth librarian in a place where they were having trouble reaching out to Black kids. And we're actually having issues in some of those libraries. And you have to be careful because you didn't go and get a master's degree to be a babysitter.
Right.
And you didn't want to have those issues delegated to you. So how does it feel to be on the other end of it? You're not being invited in by someone to come and fix issues with Black children who didn't find representation of themselves in the community, in schools, and in the library, but it was still a place they went. How do you feel to not be the one invited to come into this space to babysit Black kids? How does it feel to be a shaper of thought and imagination and a love for reading, and you get to set the bar and the pace and the rules? I mean, talk about turnabout being fair play. How does that feel?
That's a good question. I think it's really exciting. I feel like it gives me a different perspective because rather than trying to like use our resources to sort of try to reach out to kids who like don't necessarily already have interest, I think if we're sort of looking at the reading room as like, okay, we want this to be a resource for Black kids and like we want to make sure that this is space that would be meaningful for them. And I think that feels very different than trying to reach out to a demographic that has like already not had their needs met in that way. And so I think it's really significant, and I think it will make a world of difference because the intention behind the connection is different.
Oh, that's great. And as an intern and as a junior librarian or as I mentioned, an intern or someone who wasn't necessarily the head librarian, you might have worked in youth services. Are you looking forward to being the point person? I mean, as you bring team and staff on, you're going to be that librarian. They're going to be coming to you saying, Lex, how do we handle this? Or have you heard of this author? Or this family wants a film festival. They want, how does it feel knowing that the buck is going to stop with you?
I mean, that's terrifying, but in a really exciting way. Like it's scary, but it's good scary.
Yeah, I got you. Hey, we're going to talk about something really exciting, but I have to ask you a few Black icebreakers. Otherwise, people are going to say, "Oh, you didn't ask her any Black icebreakers just because that's your Black daughter." And so I need to ask you these questions because you are my Black daughter.
It's true.
Growing up, did people ever ask to touch your hair?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. How early did that start?
Oh man. Probably pretty early. I want to say probably elementary school.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Do people want to touch your skin? Like, did anybody ever ask you, like in, what's one of our favorite movies? Karina. Like the little girl was Molly, Malinchka, wanted to know if, that kid was chocolate or whatever.
Yeah.
Did people ever think that did they say, hey, is your skin dirty or is it chocolate? Did anybody ever ask you?
I don't think I ever got asked that. I did get asked if white people can get ashy.
Can they?
Yes. Probably. I would assume so.
Just not as a parent.
Exactly.
They need to worry about other things?
It's more subtle.
It needs to worry about other things. All right. No, okay, so you had white roommates. Did they ask you why you put lotion on? Like, have people asked you, why do Black people put Vaseline on their knuckles?
Yeah.
Or why do they...
I've heard a lot of people be like, I hate the sensation of lotion. Like, I don't like putting lotion on, after a shower. And that is just so foreign to me.
Right,
as
because
a concept.
You're not clean until you put lotion on. I mean, that's
Exactly.
like you dry off, then you oil up. Like you
You can't just be ashy.
That's so interesting. Did folks ask you, like in the dorms, and not that they would know this, but did people ask you, do Black people wash their hair every day?
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely questions like that.
Because we can't lose all this great oil that we've been building up. We can't just go in there and wash all this good oil away.
Literally.
This oil holds curls. This oil can part. This oil lets you shine and sheen and what have you. Did you ever get syllables whoopings as a kid?
No, I don't think so.
You didn't get,
I w-
didn't
I
I?
was-
You didn't get that?
I was a good kid,
Who spanked you more, your mom or your dad?
Mom.
Good answer. Okay, that's Oh, okay, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for answering those. Listen, there's so much stuff that I want to talk with you about because we're here to discuss Wicked. You took us to see this.
Yes.
Because I know you don't like, after the pandemic, you're still not comfortable going to theaters and stuff.
Yep.
But you wanted to go see Wicked. I think we did this for your birthday. We watched it a second time recently, and I think I'm hooked. I really, really enjoyed it. And so you've read the book,
Yes.
and then do you remember that we took you to see Wicked on Broadway?
Yes. I still have the sweatshirt.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you really?
Yeah.
How old were you then? Would that have been middle school?
I think that was middle school.
And the big stars that are in there, Chenoweth and
And Idina Menzel.
were they on stage? Do you remember?
I'm trying to remember. I think so.
Because I remember seeing pictures of them like after, with
Yeah.
the hoopla with the new one coming out. I was like, why do they look so familiar? And then
Yeah.
I thought, oh, wait a minute, they were on stage because and it was during the height of it that we went
Yeah.
to see it. It was still pretty big. And then now you're seeing the musical, the movie that's out.
Right.
Didn't get a lot of wins at the Oscars. It did get one major win for
Costume design.
and there was something unique about that, right? Wasn't that the
Yeah, it was
first?
the first black man to ever win for costume design at the Oscars.
Yeah, and he killed it because those
Yeah.
designs were really, really nice. So this may not be a fair question, but book, Broadway, movie. Looking back, which one did you enjoy the most?
Oh, that's really hard. I feel like I really enjoyed them all differently. I feel like the movie was so big because people had been waiting for so long. And there was like so much discussion about the casting and about like if it was gonna look right or if like they were gonna change the music. Like there was so much sort of like, I guess like sort of balanced on
Sure.
on the movie being good. But I feel like, I mean, you can't just like disregard the stage show or the book. Like they all sort of build off of each other. So I really feel like they're all kind of separate entities in a way.
If you could recommend the order of consumption for people, would you suggest book, Broadway, and film the way you did it, or would you recommend a different order?
I feel like that depends on what someone wants out of it. I think if you want to like know more about Elphaba's life, like while she's at while she's at Shiz at the university, and then like after, I think the book really focuses on like her choices and what she does, and like where that leads her. Whereas I feel like the stage show, I think the stage show is just amazing. I think that
It was wonderful.
yeah, like if the opportunity arises to see it, I think everybody should see it. I think there's something very powerful about getting to see that live. But I think the movie is just so accessible, and I think it gave a lot of people who like might not have otherwise had access, the ability to see this show that people have been raving about forever. And I think that the movie holds up really well. So I really feel like you can't go wrong.
Sure. What's fun to bring to this podcast is that Lex and I have these kinds of discussions. We'll watch something together, whether it's an episode of 24 or it's Wicked or it's Bob. She's got me hooked on Bob's Burgers, which I like, or it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like stuff that I have no business watching.
And you love it.
And I love it. I laugh so hard when I watch these things. And so it's so great to do this. But I've told you that I think you ought to move to California and become like a film critic or, commenting on these things, because you look at it thematically, like you break it down philosophically in a way that makes people rethink literature and film. So I think that piece is very powerful. I want you to bring that to the reading room at the center. I want you to bring not just reading books, but just the way you think about it, because it's so applicable to life, which is why people write. And so I love being able to have this discussion with you. So I have some questions I just want to just fire out at you and just talk about. One is, would this story have worked if it had been about two men, like perhaps like a black green man and one that's white? And how important is it to you, or how important do you think it is that this story has been told through the lens of two main characters who are both women?
That's a good question. I think that womanhood is very central to the story. I think that it would absolutely change the like overarching theme if Elphaba and Glinda weren't women. I think that there's a certain I think with Elphaba in particular, there's a certain experience growing up as a marginalized person and like knowing that you're different from the people around you, but like not knowing why and really struggling to like make connections with people because of that. And I feel like specifically being a marginalized woman makes that a really unique experience that I think would be very different if they weren't women.
Okay. So let's set all of this up around race, or the topic of race in here. When you think about Elphaba's dad, the governor, you can certainly tell that there was stress in the relationship, and he preferred the younger daughter.
Right.
But I was trying to feel out: did he despise her because of color, or because he questioned her parentage? So I'm curious. It wasn't exactly clear in the movie. Was it clearer in the book?
Right. In the book, the way that the book handles it is a little bit different because like it sort of starts the same way in that like Elphaba is born green and everybody is horrified. And as she grows up, like her relationship, because in the book, her mother doesn't die having Nessa Rhodes. She has a little brother also, who's younger than Nessa. And so their dynamic's a little bit different because both parents are there, but Elphaba does still grow up very isolated, and she knows that like she is different and that she's blamed for it, but I think she doesn't really understand why. And I think in the movie, when Elphaba is talking to Glinda and she's explaining like her mother had to eat the milk flowers because her dad was worried that Nessa would come out green, I think that particular conversation and also the part where Elphaba is introducing Nessa to like the headmistress at Shiz, and she says like, oh, she's a perfectly acceptable color.
Right.
I think, yeah, the movie is very intentional about sort of dropping breadcrumbs in regards to race.
You know, I love the way you describe that, how both in the book but in the movie, the racist, like Elphaba's trying to understand why there's a difference. You said that she knew she was different. That's a great illustration about what life can be like when you live the first 6 years of your life on the west side of Chicago, like I did, where you can look at my classroom pictures, 36 kids, only one is white, black teachers, you know, it's just, the community looked like me. Then I came to Madison, where I was one of two black kids.
Right.
No one fully explained race in moving to Madison.
Right.
I think grandma, my mom tried to explain it when she thought that my friend John was throwing shade or not inviting me to his house because I was black. That did not become the case. We stayed friends for decades. But she was preparing me with the talk. But it felt different. And I didn't know what it was, because people are people, and you're different colors, but there's different shades in black folks, you know. But how nebulous that is, or how it's so difficult to put your finger on it, is what makes race also so maddening, or racism so maddening, because is it that, or is it not that, or how does that work? So I didn't really think about it until you described how Elphaba wrestled with it. That's a great understanding how when in youth, when you move into this space, you feel your way into race, because we're not born thinking you see me any differently. We're just different shades, but we both have nose, eyes, feet, toe, elbow. Like we're very similar, except for that particular thing.
Exactly.
Now, we raised you in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. You're the only black kid on our street and its adjacent cul-de-sac. You always had good friends. They always came to our house. They still call, when I see them, Mr. G or Dad. But do you remember feeling your way through race in a way where you weren't exactly sure what it was? Because we didn't say, "Ooh, girl, don't go out there. Don't go down to that cul-de-sac. Don't go down to the block." I mean, we raised you in a way knowing that you were just as good, just as smart. Your name is Molly Singer, and there's nobody better than you. We trained you that way. But I'm curious, though, with all of that, did you feel your way into some of that awkwardness the way Elphaba perhaps did?
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that makes the movie so striking. I think particularly about the scene where she's at the Ozdust ballroom and everybody is like staring at her when she walks in and she's wearing the hat that Glinda gave her and everyone's like laughing at her and she's sort of trying her best to make the best of a situation where everybody is sort of in on the joke but her.
And she'd never been to a party before.
Exactly.
So it was her first time being out to a fully social space.
So it's like layers of newness on top of like feeling like she spends like the first half of the movie feeling so out of place anyway. And I think in that particular circumstance where like she's forced to acknowledge that she is sort of completely isolated. And I think one thing Cynthia does so well in that scene is her eyes are so expressive.
Yeah, they were.
And there is such a specific type of loneliness that comes with that kind of experience. And I feel like she really nails how that feels. Where, like, even if you don't... Because Elphaba doesn't think that she's doing anything wrong. Like, she's coming to a party that Glinda invited her to.
Mm-hmm. She probably thought she had arrived.
Right. And so she's trying to understand, like, why is everybody staring at me? Like, I was invited here. Like, I didn't just show up. Like, somebody told me to come here.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just trying to fit in and just trying to feel normal. And I think that scene in particular is a lot like what it feels like when, like, you are so aware that you are different. And you're aware that other people are aware of that.
You feel their eyes on you.
Exactly. Yeah. You feel surveilled. And I feel like that scene, it's probably my favorite scene in the movie. I think that it's handled so well.
You know, when she first arrived at Shiz with Nessa, she sort of went into her routine. No, I'm not sick. No, I did not eat grass.
Yeah.
You know, she started explaining all of these different things. Like, let's just get this out of the way, because people would actually say, "Oh,"
right,
when they, when
they
they
like
saw
literally screamed.
like, right, and so, which is very interesting because even though people don't gasp, sometimes you do feel that awkwardness. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're Dr. G. You sounded different on the phone.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to wrestle with color. You know, I've talked on the show about going somewhere with Tyler,
Right.
and people walking up to him saying, "You must be Dr. G."
Right.
Because they may not gasp, but they make these assumptions with the eyes. And so she had this, she was able to, at this retort, she could go back and say no, it just kind of go down this litany.
Right.
But then it sort of moved to a pity of being green also. Remember, there was parts where Glinda basically just said, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you were born that way.
Yeah.
And I remember going through phases where people would say things, oh, if you want to make your grandmother mad, let someone with a third of her education and a fifth of her salary look at her and say, I'm so sorry you're black.
Yeah.
I can still remember what mom told that lady and what she said to that lady. And I oddly, they became friends. But mom was like, I could hear her telling her friends, guys, I stay up late and listen to grown folks talk. She's like, this woman, this ignorant blankety blank blank, is going to ask me this. This is the same woman who asked me, did the same woman play Alice in the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore as the woman who played it in the book? She said, this ignorant heifer asked me, she said, baby, it's a book. I know, but did she play the role in the book too? She said, and you feel sorry for me. Pop You look. I mean,
Literally.
come on. Like, you sit there with all of that golden blondness and you're pitying me.
Yeah.
And you think actors play roles in books. Mom was like, when I leave this factory line, because it was a factory. When I leave this factory line, I'm going to get me a master's degree. You're going to be here.
He's like, yeah, enough is enough.
You're going to be here with a broom, and you ain't going to be riding it. You're going to be. And so this whole idea of being pitied
Yeah.
as a part of the awakening, like this
Right.
is like where the separation happens from people that are no longer they're not gasping. That's oh,
Right.
you're black. They're not necessarily want to touch your hair. Now they're waking up and they're saying, I feel so bad
Yeah.
that you're black. And that sort of that look, that feel, that pity, you'd almost rather people to call you the N-word to
Literally,
think
yeah.
that one, you're to be pitied, two, they're worthy of pitying you.
Right.
And what they should pity is what people who look like them and think like them do to people who look like us.
Right.
I think that was subtly brought out too,
Yeah.
with sort of moving from fear
Yes.
or disgust to pity. Do you think
And-
that's a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And I think that that's a very telling moment in the movie when Glinda says, like, oh, I want to be a sorceress. And so, like, if you ever want me to take care of this problem for you, like, just let me know. And Elphaba says, like, you're offering skills you don't have to somebody you don't know. And I think that's a really telling moment about both of them, because I think it would be very easy for Elphaba to be defensive, but I think she responds in a way that Glinda absolutely didn't expect, which is why Glinda says, like, I need to lay down. I didn't get my way. I need to go lay down.
And she did lay down, didn't she?
She did. She certainly did.
And they caught her.
They did. But I thought that was a really well-written interaction because that felt very familiar.
Man, oh man, is it crazy out here. And I don't think it's just me. Look, it's 2025. Trump is back in office, and some days it seems as if the sky is falling. There's so much uncertainty in the world right now, but I love that sitting down right here in front of this mic and letting the hard truths rumble out of my heart and off my chest is as certain as it ever was. Season 11 is gathering steam, and you're in for a real treat. Let me just tell you. When I reflect back on all of the seasons that we dropped here at Black Like Me podcast, each of them has had a special purpose, a one-of-a-kind lineup of guests, and its own unique feel. I also think about the thread that binds them all together. What we do here at Black Like Me is unique. I don't have another space that feels just like this, where I can really speak from my unique perspective. And the guests who have on the show remark that these interviews they do here are unlike any others that they've done in other places. Sure, nobody else does Black Icebreakers, but that's only part of it. We have created a truly unique space here where honest conversations about the thoughts, the ideas, the policies that affect Black people and that Black people care deeply about. And you know what? It isn't easy. And I don't do this all alone. I have an incredible team that has steadily grown over the years, and each person that joins adds another asset to what we can do here. And all of you that support us on Patreon, my people, my people, my people. We simply would not be able to do what we do or get what we have gotten without you. So as we look to even bigger and better things in the coming season, please help support the show right now by clicking the link to Patreon in the show notes and join the community of people supporting this unique and provocative space. In the world that we're living in, where there's so much attack on our perspectives, our history, our bodies, and our lives and contributions, aren't you glad you have a place where you can still hear powerful, exhilarating, intellectual Black thought like you do? I enjoy it. And so if you do too, share the good news, tell friends, click that Patreon link now. Thank you so much for your support of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex Gee. Let's talk a little bit about Galinda's persona. With the leg pops, I didn't know that was what it was called. You're like,
yeah.
Dad,
In
the
every
leg
single
pops.
scene, she
Like when
has
she
her
would just
little-
kind of
her
stick her
legs.
foot out. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that little leg pop. But ultra blonde.
Yeah.
And powdered down, really, really fair. But it was just interesting how she would say things, and I don't know how much the creators of this were trying to make this point, but I felt like it was made very it was made very well. Like she would make a statement, people say, "Oh,
Yes.
bravissimo!"
Yeah.
Like that is
Literally,
so
such
thoughtful.
braverism.
Such braverism. Like, oh my gosh, you are so selfless.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yes.
In
absolutely.
real, like talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things that makes that so good, I think in part just because it's really funny, but I think, like, for example, when Elphaba's waiting for the train to the Emerald City, and Galinda says, like, I'm changing my name, like, to show my outrage for what happened to Dr. Dillerman, I'm changing my name from Galinda to Glinda. And everybody's like, oh my God, you're so brave. And I feel like that is, like, that's exactly it. They nailed how that happens.
Yes.
And I think there's a very particular choice in having Glinda as, like, a very blonde, very pale, like, white woman. That was very intentional. And I think so much of who Glinda is sort of based on the fact that she is very privileged and like that affects every aspect of her life. She has no frame of concept of anything else. And so I think part of what makes Glinda as a character so hilarious but also so frustrating is that, like, I believe that her intentions are good, but I think she goes about her means of helping in a way that actually just benefits her. And I think that...
That's profound.
I think a really good example of that is during the scene when she tells Bach to go and ask Nessa to the ballroom. And Fiyero says, like, oh, like, you're good. Like, you know exactly what you're doing. And she says, like, I don't know what you mean. I love helping people. I love to help people. It's like, girl, no, you don't.
Sit down somewhere, girl. Let me back up a bit and then come back into this part of the discussion. Do you think that the screenplay, the movie, went way beyond what the book or even the play did on teeing up the concept of race? Because you said, like, in the book, the focus was really on more of a Jewish heritage.
Yeah.
And addressing things like anti-Semitism. But certainly here they're bringing, like, race real strong. Was that intentional? Because in the book, Broadway and the movie, green's the color. It's not like they decided to make Elphaba green for the movie.
Right.
Do you think the times call for that? Do you think the actress? Do you think Cynthia called for more of the playing up of race in this? I'm just curious about your perspective about how this was so profoundly focused on Black and non-Black interaction.
Yeah. I mean, most of the actresses, like, on the stage show have been Jewish actresses playing Elphaba. And, like, in the book, it is clear that they're, like, making a point talking about Elphaba being, like, Jewish coded. But I think for the movie, I don't necessarily know for sure, but I think with casting Cynthia as Elphaba, I think she made certain choices that she really wanted to be a nod to Black women in particular.
Like what?
Like the micro braids, her hair. Cynthia has said, like, yeah, like I specifically wanted Elphaba to have micro braids, like as a nod to Black women. And like her nails, Cynthia like always has really like extravagant, really long nails. But for Elphaba in particular, because having your nails done is like a big part of Black culture, she really wanted to do that too. And I think one of the really powerful things about fiction as a whole is that, like, you know, the whole point is that people should be able to see themselves in a story. And I do think that it makes the story feel a little bit different having Elphaba be played by a Black woman. I think particularly in regards to the song "I'm Not That Girl," I think that it really is particularly significant, because there is a line in the song where she says, like, blonde hair with a gentle curl, like that's the girl that he chose, and like I'm not that girl. And so I think that no matter what, Elphaba is required to sort of have a distance from like blonde, blue-eyed like whiteness. Like there is supposed to be sort of a discrepancy there for her. But I think for a lot of Black women in particular, it's been really, really meaningful seeing Cynthia's portrayal of Elphaba. And I think that it's very easy to see ourselves in her. And I think another example of that is at the end when Madame Morrible is like doing her voiceover like across Oz, and she says like her green skin is like a manifestation of her evil, and even like the posters that they have like at the beginning of the movie, just like giant posters of Elphaba, is very reminiscent of, particularly, I've been seeing a lot of people talk about it, it's very reminiscent of like anti-Semitic, like World War II imagery. And so I think that for the movie, they sort of were able to take that a little bit deeper. But I think it definitely it feels different having Elphaba be played by a Black woman.
Now, you just mentioned Madame Morrible. What was the wisdom, do you think, behind choosing an Asian American woman to play that role?
I think it creates space for a really difficult conversation about anti-Blackness in non-white communities. And I think there is sort of this idea of like, in order to move up, you have to step on people beneath you. And I think that whether it was intentional or not, I would find it hard to think that it isn't. I think that's a real, like that felt really bold to me, but it also felt very realistic.
It's interesting because Elphaba's character could relate to other folks who were limited or disenfranchised.
Yes.
But Madame Morrible didn't.
Right.
She sided with the Wiz.
Right.
But she was part of that whole power structure.
Yeah.
And Elphaba's color didn't mean anything to her when it helped her agenda.
Exactly.
All of a sudden now it's a badge of evil.
Right.
But she never talked about, let's do something about that skin, or let's change those micro braids, or let's clip those nails. It's like she was just perfect as she was until she stood up to the system and stood up to her.
And I think that's what makes the betrayal so significant, because I think Elphaba felt like finally somebody doesn't care what I look like. They just see what I can do. And I think that made the betrayal even more significant. And when she says to Madame Morrible, like, you knew this the whole time. Like, from the first moment you met me, you knew that like, the wizard was the one, like, hurting these animals. And I think it's easy to sort of overlook that because there's like layers of betrayal in that scene. But I think that one is really significant because Elphaba doesn't have a mother. Like, she doesn't have like a maternal figure
Right.
who was like willing to pour into her and work with her and teach her. And I think that would have meant a lot to her. And I think that sort of makes like the knife gets twisted.
Yeah. You know, you made a reference to one of the songs, I'm Not That Girl, but there are a couple of other songs that makes you think, like at the end when Elphaba is making this choice to leave and to fight the structured power. And they throw around this phrase, I hope you're happy. I want to get your take on this. One take could be that Glinda was like, all right, you're making that choice. Really hope you're happy. But in my world, when I say to someone, I hope you're happy, it's almost like, now see what you've done?
Yeah.
Okay, so you think you're so big and bad? You think you're so smart? All right, I hope you're happy now. Do you think that song had a sort of a tinge of sarcasm, or am I reading too much into it?
No, I definitely think so. I think
Who said it first?
Glinda.
She said, I hope you're happy.
Yeah, she says it first. And I definitely think that Glinda is being snarky in that scene, but I also think that she, earlier in the song, Glinda says, or before the song, but when Elphaba is like reading the spell, trying to give herself wings, and Glinda says like, maybe you're not as powerful as you think you are.
Right.
And
coming from someone who has never demonstrated any
she
power
has no magical
other than to
abilities.
flip her hair and do the leg pop and manipulate Fiero,
Yeah.
but you're going to actually question someone's power in
Right.
that moment.
Right.
And you just saw what she's done.
Exactly. And I feel like that moment just adds to the betrayal for Elphaba. And I think even though she knows Glinda isn't going to come with her, she still offers that olive branch. And there's a deleted scene after Fiero and Elphaba rescue the cub where Glinda says to Elphaba, like, like if you needed to trust somebody, like, you could ask me, like, I would have helped you. And Elphaba says, like, okay, I won't leave you behind again. And I feel like that makes the ending so much more tragic because I do think Elphaba would have, if Glinda would have said yes, I don't think Elphaba would have had any hesitation to go with her. But I think what makes Glinda in particular such a tricky character there is like she is forced to wrestle with like the idea of right versus wrong, but then also having to like give up everything that she's ever known and like all of the privilege that she's lived with, and like even though she knows that the wizard has been lying to them, she still tells Elphaba, like, let's just hear him out, let's just see what he has to say, even though there's absolutely no chance that Elphaba would ever do that. I think it sort of puts them both in a really tricky situation, but I think if the roles were reversed, I think Elphaba absolutely would have gone with Glinda, and I don't think she would have had any hesitation in doing so. The most fascinating part about their dynamic is, like, because they are such fundamentally different people, I think it's really cool to see the ways that they change each other and, like, the way that their relationship makes them both different, which is, like, a huge theme in the show as a whole. And I feel like, I think that it's written really well where, like, the characters feel believable and, like, the choices that they make feel believable. And even when the stakes are really high, I think there isn't really a moment, even when, like, we as the audience, for example, like, at the end with Defying Gravity, where, like, Elphaba's making her choice and she asks Glinda to come with her. I feel like as the audience, we're given so much insight into, like, who they are and what they mean to each other. And I think it makes it so much more impactful knowing why Glinda chooses not to go and, like, what that means for Elphaba and for their relationship. And I think, it's just written so well, and it feels so natural and like very believable, which I think is a lot of credit to like Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo's chemistry together. I think that they work really well together, and their voices are insane. They're so talented. But I think there's a really cool interview where someone asks Cynthia about like what her favorite part was working with Ariana Grande on the project. And she was talking about how like Ariana brings like a certain softness to Glinda, and how like she has like noticed a lot of that same softness in herself from like working with her. And I think there's something really powerful about like the dynamic working in the story, but then also just between the actresses. I think it's really cool. It's all just really intertwined in a really powerful way.
I know you also like was the song called "The Wizard and I"?
Yes.
What about that was powerful?
She talks a lot about what she's been like working towards and what she's wanted her whole life, and how, like once she gets to be with the wizard, like nobody will like think she's strange anymore, and like everybody has to love and respect you as long as like the wizard chooses you. So I think she sort of sees this as like a key to her being able to have like a normal life, or at least as close to normal as she could have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something that makes that so powerful is when she's talking to the wizard at the end, and he says like, oh, like if you want, like your friend can come too. And that's sort of the moment where Elphaba says like, no, like I don't want that. Like I can't want that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where Glinda sees it as like sort of like a step up, and like she's very ambitious and like has a certain she sees a certain future for herself. And I think she sort of is able to think like, oh, well, the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
And Elphaba is very much not that way.
Right. And that's in one of the scenes when she meets the wizard, and she goes into his chamber. Mm-hmm. He's very warm to her. He's like, Elphaba, is that you? Then he comes down there and brings her up and everything. When she sees the little doll, the figurine of herself, mm-hmm. she says, she's green like me. He goes, well, we could change that. She said, no. Like that could have been her first request,
right,
to the Wiz.
Right.
I can't remember, this play just popped in my head, or this poem where this black woman is like reading this poem or quoting this poem or making it to a group of white people. And there's this scene where she's like throwing magic dust, or what's supposed to be like magic dust, saying, and you're black and loving it. And you're black and loving it. Like there is a black joy. There is.
Yeah.
We don't want to be terrorized because of how we think, how we act, our swag, our intellect, our communication, our thought, our process, our theology. We don't want to be terrorized because of that.
Right.
But I think it's surprising to people that not for a moment do we want to trade in what it means to be black. Now, we don't want all the stipulations and all the limitations, but there's so much joy in being who we are because of how all of this was forged and ties us together, even through our black icebreakers. And I think it's really surprising to people, going back to the pity of being green or being black. Right. I think it's surprising when black people are together, Anthony Ward, we'll be together, be like, all right, Pastor, I'm about to leave, stay black. Or, we'll say stuff like that. Whereas our white friends, at least not in front of us, they might say it, but like, no, like, stay black, all right, be black, stand up for the cause, all right, so man, represent, come on now, you're the only one up in there, stand tall, be black all day. I don't think that people realize that with all the work that has happened to say their dark skin is an outward manifestation of their inward evil,
right,
that we're not running around thinking, oh my gosh, I'm evil and I'm dirty. People have been
Right.
trying to tell us that for 500 years in this country,
Yeah.
and we still don't believe it. And then what's America doing? Putting collagen in their lips and their butts and their stuff, trying to look like us, flow like us,
Yeah.
dance, do all this other kind of stuff. It's dirty for us,
Right.
but it's sexy and money making.
Right.
I saw a Captain Crunch commercial a couple years ago, and John LaFoot or Captain LaFoot, whatever his name is, the guy that doesn't wear shoes on it, but it's like breakdancing. Like, I've been eating Captain Crunch my whole life with Crunch Berries, and you breakdance like this dude is spinning on his back. Like, now again, this is like 5 years ago. Breakdancing was like the craze, like in the
Yeah.
80s, but still, it took them years, before the captain decided to do it. But it's so interesting. So I digress. But I think it's interesting for our leaders, for our listeners to understand we don't go home wishing we were black. In fact, when we do find out that black people have been bleaching their skin, we feel very badly. We're like, what did someone do to you
Yeah.
to not be proud of that beautiful glistening skin and that texturized hair and those full God-shaped lips? Like, what? Like, who hurt you to the point where you can't look in the mirror and understand how absolutely fantastic and breathtaking we are? And she didn't take the bait. She thought about it, because that could have been what she spoke about. But again, I think this is true just to black women. You're in front of the wizard. She's like, we need your help because the animals are being
Right.
hurt. Like, so she's there. She's helping
Yes.
other people, which helps me to understand black women today.
Yeah.
Because how many elections did we deliver? Did y'all deliver even in the South?
Right.
And then when a black woman is running, everybody's like, I think I want to go with Trump. So that's why you see black women on Instagram eating popcorn as they're being juxtaposed, with a white woman or a Latina woman saying, I didn't know they were going to come after us. I didn't know they were going to take our jobs. And black women are just like eating popcorn. Like, we tried to tell you.
Yeah.
We tried to tell you. We tried to tell you. So I think the image that she's looking out for others and caring
Yes.
for other disenfranchised people was so telltale, because I don't think that that's going to be emphasized enough.
Yeah.
Did you think about that as you saw that?
Yeah. I think that's very accurate. And I think particularly because there's a moment in The Wizard and I when she talks about like, oh, like maybe one day when I'm with the wizard, like he'll see that like I'm capable and I'm able, and like he'll see something in me, so he'll want to like degreenify me. But I think one of the biggest character arcs that Elphaba has over the course of the movie is that like she's able to settle more into herself, which I think gives her more capacity to care for others. And sort of because she has suffered so much, she has a greater capacity for empathy. And I think that that's really, really powerful.
Wow. And so that's more costly than taking the A out of Godlinda
Exactly.
and a leg pop.
Exactly.
And she like that arc happened fairly privately.
Right.
But Glinda was like, people,
Hello, everybody.
everyone, come over here, come notice me.
I have an announcement.
I have an announcement to make about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me say this. I love that they brought out that element of her personality within a friendship,
Yeah.
because it says a couple of things. That if you're asleep and not woke,
Right.
you can awaken
Yes.
and have an opportunity to be in real friendship.
Yes.
But in being a real friendship, particularly cross-cultural, thinking
Right.
like white women and black women, and I said
Right.
this in a sermon a couple of weeks ago, black men and white men can go to war together, and we have. We can go to the golf course together. We have and we do. The basketball court, we have and we do. I don't think black women and white women have worked out what took place
Yeah.
on the plantations, white women overseeing black women and their children and the black families while she's angry because of what's happening in the slave quarters with her husband
Right.
and the black women. That has played itself out,
Yes.
but it has not been dealt with or addressed. But the fact that they entered into a friendship and she still proved that she wasn't really woke, but she
Right.
was trusted as a friend, that you can be a friend and still be awkward and not get it together.
Yeah.
And she fell out of grace with Elphaba because she chose greed over friendship.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, Was she attracted to Elphaba because she got her into Madame Morrible's class? I mean, you see real traces of friendship.
Right.
The conversation, I believe that it was authentic. But maybe she didn't even know to the extent that she was attracted, not just to her, but who she represented and doors she could open. Because there was no one closer to Madame Morrible than Elphaba.
Right.
Then that began to fall away. So for me, what that says is, just because you're not woke or aware in these key relationships doesn't mean that you can't be.
Right.
But just because you do get in them, don't think you can't fall out of them. Because and once you see your ugliness and your selfishness and you see those kinds of choices you're making, you got to course correct, because that relationship resolves. So I think people get too comfortable in cross-cultural relationships. Think they can say and do anything, or if they don't have them, they think they can never have it. So I'm saying go for those relationships, but be authentic in them.
Right.
But don't think that because you're in it. Well, my friend Clifford told me, or my friend Bobby told me, well, I have a black friend, and he was the only one in my community, and he said he doesn't see color, so it's not true. And he said that Trump said that the black people should pull themselves up, or he said, I just think people need to understand it's work to be in cross-cultural relationships, and it's work to stay in them. But don't be afraid when you see true motives come up and out. Make a decision.
Yeah.
But Glinda decided to step on Elphaba to get something what she really wanted, power and access, and completely turned her back on the only person who gave her a ticket on that train.
Yeah.
Because the Wiz didn't give a rip about her, nor did Madame Morrible.
Right.
Only one person got her on that train,
Right.
and that's the only person she stepped on.
Yeah.
You know, I saw another thing too as we're winding up. We often see in a movie the twist of the black male choosing the white female over the black woman. This was different, where the white leading man chooses a black woman or green woman over very white and blonde woman. I mean, he's still with her, but at the end of the movie, he's like going somewhere, like he's looking for her, or he's like, it's not like it doesn't look like he's running from her. But I just thought that was very interesting, because it seemed like he was drawn to her self-confidence, her resolve, and her care for others. You don't typically see that. And it wasn't, and not that Cynthia is not attractive because she's beautiful. It's not that she's not a leading lady because she was. But it's also interesting that in that case, she was not an over-sexualized black female character or figure, and he wasn't drawn to some black, white fantasy he dreamed up or inherited from his uncles or dad or magazines or something.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to see his commitment, and it was around her convictions and what they held together. Go ahead, take a drink.
I was just going to say, I could talk about Glinda and Fiyero and Elphaba all day. I think that their dynamic is so fascinating, and I think that their like weird little love triangle is really, really interesting, like as a narrative theme. Because I think before Glinda has even really spoken to Fiyero, she's like, I want that one. That one's mine. I got dibs. And I think when we see Fiyero and Elphaba interact for the first time, where she says, like, is this just how you go through your life, like trampling people? Like, what's wrong with you? And he looks just like completely shell-shocked, because I think nobody has ever spoken to him like that in his life.
No one probably told him to get stuffed either. Whatever that means. Can I say that on the air?
I'm not going to say anything. But I think it's kind of funny, because I feel like Glinda and Fiyero make sense, like, aesthetically, but they don't really click emotionally. Whereas Elphaba and Fiyero, I think that their chemistry and their connection, because it centers so much on like doing the right thing and like a very clear sense of morality, which I think before meeting Elphaba, I think Fiyero would just not really care about morals in general. I think that he
gave off that air that he didn't give a damn.
I don't think that Fiyero has had a thought in his life. Which I think is what makes it really funny when Glinda says, like, he's thinking and it worries me. And so I think that it's very clear that Elphaba as a person makes Fiyero a better person. And I think that Glinda doesn't have that impact because she doesn't have... I think that because Elphaba has suffered for a very long time, and because she has very developed empathy, and she's very able to like read people and connect with them in ways that Glinda can't do because she hasn't needed to. There's another deleted scene where Glinda is talking about how hard it is to do magic, and Elphaba says, like, well, you've had everything your whole life, so maybe you don't need it, and that's why it's harder.
that was that was an interesting. Yeah,
and I feel like
scene.
That's a very good analysis of Glinda as a person. Like, I think she doesn't have a lack, so like she doesn't need to grow in that way. And I think because Elphaba can challenge Fiyero in ways that he's never experienced, I think part of the reason why he pulls away from Glinda is because he's like, oh, I could be a completely different person.
Right.
And I could be better.
Yes. Because he didn't come to that goodbye with Glinda.
Right.
Because Elphaba said, I thought I'd see him. And then he came later, said goodbye, said, I've been thinking about that cub, or I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah.
Then he left without Glinda.
Exactly.
So he certainly didn't come to make it wasn't like the two of them were together and then he sort of, in a forlorn sort of way looked over his shoulders like, bye, my forbidden love. He came there to say goodbye to her and wish her luck, and then he left.
Right.
And so that's very interesting. And to the extent that he could represent sort of a systematic depiction of either white male patriarchy or supremacy or what have you, she was able to correct that.
Right.
Or to adjust that in a way that Glinda couldn't. And so it does bring back things to this whole discussion of, so when are we going to start listening to Black women and taking this more seriously?
Exactly.
I'm going to have this discussion as I have, leaders of political parties coming in, particularly the Democratic Party, which has seen the work of Black women. This is a discussion I want to have. So when is this going to be factored in and not just calling on people when it's election time? It's clear there's conviction and history and perspective and strength that is transformational.
Yes.
So when are we going to institutionalize this and not just prostitute it?
Yeah. Yes. That's good. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that one of the most poignant things about Elphaba as a character is her perception. Like, when she's talking to Fiyero one of the first times, and she says, like, oh, like, you pretend to be so shallow and so self-absorbed. And he's like, actually, I'm deeply shallow and very self-absorbed. And she's like, no, you're not, because otherwise you wouldn't be so unhappy. Like, she
called that out.
Yeah. She is so perceptive in that way, and she's able
That's
to...
prophetic, too.
Yeah.
It's perceptive, but it's also prophetic.
Yes. And I think that surprised Fiyero more than anything else, because I don't even think he knew that about himself.
And let me just say this, Lex. All this pushback on DEI and not wanting to have representation, there's a very strong, and I haven't thought about this until you made that point, there's a very strong, relevant, and prophetic voice of Black women. When you systematically remove that from government, business, education, you're not going to have that prickly voice that doesn't come to destroy but correct.
Yes.
When that correction is not there, that beast is going to come after everybody.
Yes.
So they think that they're keeping us out of spaces so that these positions go to the most qualified.
Right.
When they lose that Black, feminine, prophetic voice, the beast that will be unleashed is going to bite off every head it gets, and not just people that look like us, because we're not in those offices.
Exactly.
So who are they going to come after in those boardrooms? They're going to come after women. They're going to come after folks in wheelchairs. They're going to come after people from LGBTQ. They're going to come whoever they think is the furthest away from them. They're going to come at them.
Yes.
And so y'all might think about joining in on the next Target boycott or Amazon, or you need to really think about what's going on, because when no one can come and check the beast. Right. Just like Dorothy checked the lion in the original Wizard of Oz. No one else did. She slapped the doo-doo out that lion. What'd you do that for? And he didn't eat nobody after that. He didn't bite nobody after that.
That's true.
So that's just something to think about. So, honey, I got This is so great. Will you promise me that you'll come back in after you do more design work on the reading room? I'd love to know what some of your plans are as a curator of stories. Will you do that?
I'd love to.
And when the sequel
Yeah,
or
when
the
part 2
prequel,
comes
is it
out.
will it be
Part
the
2.
sequel? Mm-hmm. Okay. When that comes out this fall,
Yep.
watch it. Let's watch it together. But would you come back so we can talk about it and tie it together
I'd love to.
with this? Thank you so much for being here. So listen, my special guest is Catherine Alexis Victorious Gee, but her moniker is Lex, and she is a curator of stories, an urban intellectual who is wanting to bring truth and hope and courage to our young people and empowerment through the use of story. And I'm so proud to work with her and to know her, to be related to her and to be her dad. While I'm showing my appreciation, I want to thank the rest of my podcast team who have helped me load all these 200 plus episodes. Mr. Jeremy Holliday, who is an engineer and producer. Another engineer and producer is Eli Steinlich, who's here in the studios with me as well. Don Thornton, who handles guest relations and making sure we get people here to the studio. Arianda Proctor is in charge of social media and online community. You want to check that out. She's building and coordinating our online community so we stay in touch between episodes. Jakisha Hunt handles our merch. To all of my Patreon people, for those of you that are supporting this podcast regularly, you make this possible. You are my people, and I appreciate you. And the listeners, thank you so much for always tuning in. And don't just be selfish with this. You can think of dozens of people who need to listen to this episode because you know lots of people who love or hate Wicked. So send this link to them. I'm so proud to be your podcast host, and I want to thank you all for helping to make this a fantastic podcast and fantastic space. So thank you again for being a part of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex Gee.
Black like me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex Gee. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.